Hello everyone, this is Aussie's Elect and welcome back to a video on the Queensland election. It is happening very soon, and what you can see in front of you is a possible way the LNP could end up in minority government. All throughout the campaign, we have been thinking it's been almost a certainty that the LNP have this in the bag, that they're surefire in to get into a majority government. But some things have changed in the last couple of days, namely a couple of opinion polls which have the Labour Party in with striking distance of being ahead on the two-party preferred. The first sign was this YouGov poll, which had the coalition down to 41%, when the previous YouGov poll, which was a couple of months ago, had the coalition at 43% and the Labour Party on 26%, and the Labour Party were up to 31%. The two-party preferred was 55-45, so it still was pretty bad for the Labour Party, but it was definitely better than things we had been seeing recently, such as the Courier Mail exit poll, which had the LNP on 58% of the two-party preferred. Just briefly on this Courier Mail poll, it did have a poll of 10 seats, which gave a particularly strong result for the LNP. Very strange high vote for the One Nation Party in Rockhampton, I have to say. But yeah, I think with these polls, you should take a grain of salt the size of a boulder, especially on the fact that these polls were taken around 10 days ago, and this is before the statewide polls have narrowed. We then got a result strategic, which had the LNP on 53.47, then a news poll, which had the LNP on 52.5, and then finally we had a UComs poll last night with quite a big sample size that have the LNP on only 51 to 49%, which is the closest poll that we've had in Queensland in some time, since February this year, which was also UComs. So perhaps there is some bias, but polls were a little bit better for the Labour Party back then too, amongst other pollsters. I know it's also a Labour-aligned poll. Regardless, it looks like things have gotten better for the ALP since the campaign started, to the point where seats which were not in play for the ALP are looking like they have a chance of keeping. So the AE forecast has changed their forecast. It now has minority government for the LNP up to around about 18%. It has a two-party preferred at 53%. It has a first preference vote at 41.5%. And as you can see here, the Labour Party two-party preferred has increased in recent days. It also has the seat total for the LNP now under 50. I believe during my last video it was on 55, so it's had them lose about 6 seats. And you can see quite clearly here how things have changed in the last week or so. Now seats like Rockhampton are very much the favourite for Labour to win. Even seats like Keppel, Ipswich West, Cairns was always something that Labour had a decent chance in, but they're nearly almost on 50% now. Mackay, Springwood is looking a bit better for them. Cook is looking okay. Pine Rivers is looking better. Mundingburra, which I thought was a surefire Labour loss, is looking a bit better. Pumicestone, thank you for all the people who told me how to pronounce that, is actually looking alright for Labour. In McConnell, which a lot of people are talking about Grace having a chance, they're still not looking too hot, but that is not a traditional LNP versus Labour contest. Mansfield, Labour still struggling, which is one that I actually did not give to the LNP on my previous prediction. Gavin, Labour actually doing pretty well. And then on some of these seats, I do believe that the Labour Party's odds have improved. Okay, so I will admit this is actually pretty dismal for the LNP. I don't actually think that a result like this is probably going to happen. So let's go through the seats, which I think have the best chance for the LNP to actually be able to gain this election. Now, this still hasn't given any seats that currently are occupied by the LNP to Labour or to anyone else, but it has given some seats back to Labour, and in one case to One Nation instead of where the LNP are the favourites. The first one I want to talk about is Redcliffe, where a prominent sitting member of the Labour Party is retiring. A lot of people are expecting that the LNP will get Redcliffe, so we're going to put that back in the LNP column. The next seat is Springwood. This is yet another seat which I didn't actually give to the LNP on my last prediction, along with Mansfield. I kind of just predicted that the LNP would only gain Aspley in Brisbane. But these 3 seats here, McAllister, Springwood, and Mansfield, have been ones that have been discussed as possible gains for the LNP, and most people are giving Springwood to the LNP. So if you look at here, Springwood has a margin of 8.3%, and because it's in the city of Brisbane, I'm actually a bit surprised that a lot of people are suggesting that it's a win for the LNP. That is including AE forecasts and the betting websites. I know there's like demographic change and stuff like that, but yeah, I just find that a little bit odd. Mansfield I can understand a little bit better because the margin is a bit less. It's on 6.8%. But yeah, I'm not too sure about those 2 seats. So with Springwood and Mansfield, the LNP would be on 47 seats, and this would give them majority government. Pumastone is also a outer Brisbane seat, which the betting sites are giving to the LNP, but the AE Forecast website is suggesting will be an ALP hold. Let's give this to the LNP. Let's also look at Keppel, that the AE Forecast site thinks that the One Nation candidate only really has an outside shot, and the betting sites also concur. So let's also give that to the LNP. Now, I actually think that Gavin is one where I think the Labor Party have it in the bag. So I'm not going to give that to the LNP, but Ipswich West is one which most have been predicting that the LNP will retain after winning it at a by-election. I think Labor Party could win it back with this narrowing of polls, but the LNP have a brand new member, and it is likely that they could also keep that seat. Then we have a bunch of regional seats, including Maryborough. Maryborough is in quite a strong margin, which is why it sort of seems difficult to perhaps give it to the LNP. And I think out of these regional seats, Maryborough is probably one of the least likely. But even with these narrowing of these polls, I can still see quite a big swing in the regions, and it could be uneven, even amongst the regions itself. Rockhampton, this is another one that has been moving back into the Labor Party maintaining it as of recently. The margin is not quite as high as Maryborough, and that's why it feels like possibly that could go to the LNP, but some people have been predicting that it's going to stay with Labor, and Mackay is another one of those. But I think out of all these, Mackay is the most likely to move. As for Mulgrave and Cairns, I think at this stage they'll probably stay with Labor. I still think all of the Townsville seats are going to go pretty swiftly to the LNP. There has been polls which suggest that the KEP are in with a chance in Mundingborough and Thuringowa, interestingly enough though. And there has been talks that perhaps the Katters Party will not maintain that seat in Mirani, but I'm going to keep it with them. And with that, the LNP managed to get a majority and with a couple of seats extra. I think this is a pretty likely result. I think it's slightly worse for the LNP than I predicted last time, although last time I completely ignored these South Brisbane seats, which a lot of people were actually expecting might be possible LNP wins. Another seat I will mention, which is actually quite interesting, is Kapalaba, and that seat I still am not 100% sure on how to pronounce. There's Kapalaba or Kapalaba, I'm not sure, but on the betting websites it actually gives this one to the LNP, and I'm not actually sure why it does that. That's kind of odd. I also want to talk a little bit about McConnell. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not the Greens will win this seat. They still think out of all the possible seats, Cooper and McConnell are the most likely. But I also think it's possible that the Labor Party could actually hang on to McConnell because of the presence of Grace there. Betting websites give it to Greens, and so does AE Forecast. I'm going to say that it's actually going to remain with the Labor Party. If the Labor Party are indeed doing this well, and, showing it to the LNP who are giving non-answers on abortion, stuff like that, I think it makes sense that perhaps the Greens will only pick up one seat this election in Brisbane. Some of the Labor Party's policies, like mining royalties, I think are really going to suit the people in Brisbane. And so that's why I think like seats like Springwood really could stay with the Labor Party. Look, I think it's likely that the LNP could win under 50 seats, but I still think it's quite likely at this stage that the LNP will still get majority government. The betting sites concur with this. The coalition majority is still the safest bet, but it has narrowed within the last about half an hour to an hour. Coalition minority were on 1 to 9 and are now on 1 to 8.5. So clearly people are thinking a coalition minority is a bit more likely than a couple of days earlier if things are changing this fast. I did put $5 on this actually because I thought the odds were pretty good when it was 1 to 9. But really, I don't think it's going to happen. I think the coalition will get a majority government. I think 47 seats is all they need, and they will probably get something like 49, 50, 51, something like that. There's quite a few seats that could go to them, which I've not given to them on here, such as Rockhampton, even like Cairns and Cook. Polls are only so well, and don't forget the one big thing, which I haven't mentioned yet, is that many people are voting pre-poll this election. Probably not as much as last election, because last election was during COVID, but many people are voting pre-poll. So a lot of people have already voted. A lot of people voted a week or two ago when the polls were much better for the LNP. And so pre-polls might just save the LNP this election. A lot of people might have voted for the LNP who, if they voted later, might have said, actually, I think voting for the Labour Party wouldn't have been such a bad idea. That does happen. And I think that will save the LNP in a couple of seats. I was talking to Sormon, who I'll be doing a live stream on Saturday night with for the election, and he was suggesting that there might be a bit of a red mirage, similar to the 2020 Trump-Biden red mirage, but at this time it's the left party, the Labour Party, who might be looking strong early into election night, and then as more results come in, the LNP might be in a stronger position. We saw the opposite of that in the ACT election last Saturday, where the LNP looked a lot stronger earlier in the night, and that's because pre-polls were counted earlier than votes on the day. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give Springwood to Labour, and I think I'm going to actually give Ipswich West back to Labour. I have a feeling that that was just a bit of a protest vote, and they're going to return back to Labour, just as the polls have returned back to Labour in the last couple of weeks. So I think the LNP will get a majority, but only by a couple of seats. If they do end up in minority government, they probably will form a government with Sandy Bolton if they can. If they can't, they'll have to mess around with Qatar or One Nation, which they won't want to do. And I believe Christopher Lee has already ruled out getting into a minority government with Qatar. But of course he's going to say that, and then if push comes to shove, he might have to. I don't see the Labour Party getting enough seats for them to just get into government with the Greens or something, and I don't know if they really want to do that anyway. So yeah, LNP majority, LNP minority is... it could happen, but I think LNP majority is what is going to happen, although this is a much tighter result than we would have expected a couple of weeks ago. Thank you for watching, everyone. I will be uploading a aftermath video for the ACT very soon as well. That's going to be a quick video. There isn't too much to talk about there, but I just wanted to get this out ASAP because the Queensland election is coming up within hours at this point. So goodbye. Oh, by the way, as per Sormon's community announcement, we will be doing a live stream on the Sormon channel at 6:30 p.m. AEST tomorrow night on Saturday, the 26th of October. That is 6:30 p.m. AEST, not AEDT, which would be 7:30 p.m. AEDT. So go subscribe to the Sormon channel and check us out when the live stream starts. Goodbye.